I posted this video about 6 months ago and it has well over 300,000 views. And a lot of you wanted me to do a part 2 of what I learned from Joe Dispenza that has completely changed my life. And I'm talking about building an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers, hosting my own events, making multi-six figures, getting married, absolutely everything. So today, I don't want to just share with you what I've learned to manifest reality. I really want to get into what I have learned about the mindset that has allowed me to change. Because when I actually wanted to change my life, one of the main reasons why I couldn't change was because of the negativity in my mind, the stories that I was telling myself. So after I learned all of these things from Joe Dispenza, I was able to make all of these changes. So to make it easier for me to share with you, I'm going to break down every single thing into 3 sections in today's video. I'm going to first go through what is keeping your mind stuck right now. Because once again, one of the main reasons why we cannot change is because of the voice in our head, is because of the stories that we're telling ourselves, and is because of the identity we believe we are. And then I'm going to go through what changes your mindset and your reality. And then finally, I'm going to cover the exact steps to manifest a new reality. The first thing that I want to get into is what's keeping your mind stuck right now. So when I started to listen to Joe Dispenza, one thing that he said that honestly clicked with me right away was a very strong emotion felt in a specific moment changes your internal chemistry. So when I think back and look at all of the moments in my life where it triggered a strong emotion of hatred or sadness or anxiety or heartbreak, that specific moment changed the way that I proceeded with my life. So I'll never forget the time before. It was the relationship I had before now my husband. I remember I was at a wedding and I caught my ex cheating during that specific wedding. And I remember in that moment when I saw that happen, I will never forget how I felt, because it truly felt like my heart shattered. It was a moment of betrayal. And I remember in that moment, I just stopped trusting men and I stopped trusting relationships. So that specific moment I'll never forget, because it set basically the baseline of how I was going to proceed going into not just intimate relationships, but relationships in general. So any specific time you feel a very strong emotion, that changes our mindset, and that starts to predict and assume what could potentially happen in the future. So this is why past experiences change us. When we go through specific trauma, we start to mold that perception about what could potentially happen in the world. Now, the other thing that made me go, oh my goodness, this is so true, because I used to do this all the time, is after you experience a negative event, you repeat it in your mind hundreds of times and make it out worse than what it was, right? So how many times have we came across, a specific situation, an event, maybe we embarrass ourselves, maybe someone says something about us, maybe we mess up during a presentation, honestly, anything. And then later that day, we just keep repeating it in our mind of oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. And then eventually we start to make that mean something bad about us, right? So the repetition causes the thought to be stored in the body, not just in the mind. So over time, when we repeat a scenario in our head over and over again, we don't just think about it as it happened, we make it out worse than it actually is. And in that specific moment, when we feel that, kind of embarrassment or shame or that hurt and betrayal, the feeling that we feel in that experience, we start to feel it all the time when we're thinking about it. The mind and the body, and I'll get to this here in a sec, but the mind and the body is so objective. It doesn't know the difference between something that you're thinking about and something that happens in real life. So over time, that repetition of constantly thinking about something bad that happened in your life, it is not just stored in the mind, it's stored in the body. So we start to feel that anxiety in our chest, we start to feel the tightness in our stomach, and that's when every single time we put ourselves in a brand new situation, we feel anxious. We start to ruminate of what could potentially go wrong, not because something is about to go wrong, but because we have constantly ruminated on what happened in the past over and over again. And eventually the mind actually becomes the body. And Joe Dispenza says this all the time. Like, if your mind becomes the body, that is why it's so hard to make changes in our life, because it's not just the voice in our head that's stopping us. Now it's truly the physical sensation that's telling us, hey, that is not safe to do, when in reality, it's just your body still stuck in that past experience. So honestly, the reason why we tend to suffer is because we aren't living in the present, but in the emotions of the past or in the future. Every single time, like, I will vividly remember this. Every single time after I went through my breakup, when I was still living at my dad's house, when I wanted to make more money, I was in the beginning stages of starting my business, I would continually relive the emotions of the past of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that to me. I can't believe I don't have money. I can't believe I graduated college on a high and now I'm living at my dad's house and I don't know what to do next to really change my life. When you're living in the past emotion, it is very cloudy for you to take any clear action in the present moment. So this is also why you can take a lot of action in the present, but then revert back and go back to your old self, because the emotions that are happening in your mind, in your body, start to pull you back to the old experiences. So that's why for me, I always tell people, if you actually want to change your life, you need to look at what is happening in your mind. And of course, Joe Dispenza, says that all the time. Now, the second part of what I want to get into, now that we understand, what is keeping our mind stuck, what actually changes our mindset and our reality. Now, specifically in Joe Dispenza's words, he says, prune apart the old associations with your current feelings, because the neurons that no longer wire together won't fire together. And I know for me, every single morning when I would wake up, I had the same routine. I would wake up in bed, I would pick up my phone, start to scroll. I would be like this. I'd start to scroll social media for at least a good 10 to 20 minutes, not wanting to wake up. Eventually, I would get up, I would brush my teeth, I would make breakfast, then I would just get to work. I would keep thinking about my same problems, maybe the pain that was happening in my back. I checked my texts and my friends were complaining about, people that they were seeing. I was basically repeating the same routines and being in the same environment, talking to the same people, and associating all of those things with the same emotions that I was still feeling, right? So your daily routine in feeling sad or behind is continually firing the same neurons that are wired together that are making you feel this way. So one thing that I actually don't have in my notes, but one thing that I start to do early on, I always say early on in my journey of personal development, I start to do pattern interruptions all throughout the day. Because when I start to learn about this, I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Because if I do the same thing, I'm going to feel the same way, right? So I started to wake up in the morning, not touching my phone for at least an hour or two after waking up. I want to get right into work. I started to meditate. I started to go on walks. I would feed myself with different type of foods that would actually help me feel good. If you start to disassociate yourself with the routine that you continually do that reminds you of how poorly you might feel in your life, you will start to create different neural pathways in your brain to basically lead you to the changes that you do want to see in your life. Now, the second piece of this is creating a stronger emotional charged emotion to replace it with the old one is what will actually allow you to change your mindset and your reality. Now, what Joe says this a lot when it comes to meditation, right? Because when you're in a meditative state, you can cultivate that life, you can visualize, and you can experience those strongly emotional charged emotions and then replace it with what you're feeling right now. Now, I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to share something that happened to me. So once again, when you go through a bad breakup like what I went through, you are in the midst of such a strong heartbreak. Like, I remember for a good month, I could barely eat. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't look at my phone because I genuinely felt like my heart was in shatters. Now, if you guys know my story, this happened in 2019. In the beginning of 2020, I decided to move to Florida, not knowing anybody here. Now, the minute that I moved to Florida, the first person that I met is now my husband, Andy, 6 years later. in that moment when I met Andy, the emotion that I started to feel of love was so much stronger than the emotion of pain that it disappeared. Like, it did not matter anymore of what happened in the past because I had replaced it with a stronger emotion. So that's why Joe always says, this doesn't have to happen in real life. You can do it while you're meditating, but if you can find a stronger emotional charged emotion and replace it with what you're currently feeling, you'll start to see those changes not just happen in your mind, not just happen in your body, but you're actually gonna see those changes happen in your environment. Now, I kind of jumped ahead, but the other thing is, if you change your environment to create new associations with a new mindset, everything else changes around you. I know for me, when I was still living at my dad's house, every single morning I would wake up and scan my reality for lack. It was the same thing over and over again. When you're living in the same town, living in the same house, living around the same type of people for years, and that has what has created your identity, your thought patterns, the way you do life, sometimes it is really hard to change when you don't change anything around you. So that's why, I have written down here, it's hard to change when you're focused on time, how much time has passed, when you're focused on the body, how you feel, and when you're focused on the environment around you. So I'm a very hardcore person when it comes to change. So when I moved to Florida, I was in the midst of, once again, my life was falling apart. I was going through a bad breakup. I had no money, but I wanted to be my own business owner. I wanted to find love. I wanted to move to a different city. So I genuinely packed up my car, drove straight across the country to Florida, and left my old life behind. And that's why in 2020, I completely changed my life. Like, genuinely, my business blew up. My highest month in business was making $50,000 a month. I met Andy. I went through such a big change because I caused such a big interrupt in my environment, in my association. So that's why also I always tell people, if you want to make a change in your life, you have to set a different pattern. You need to create a different environment. Get around different people so that way your brain not only starts to create different pathways in your mind so you start to feel differently, but it also weakens the old pathways, right? And I don't want to get into neuroscience in this video, but there's something in your brain called neuroplasticity, and that's basically your brain's ability to change and create different pathways over time. If you stop entertaining a pathway that is very strong right now, like the pathway of I can't do it, I can't change, my life sucks, if you stop entertaining it, that pathway will start to disappear, right? So you want to replace that with one that's actually going to help you. Okay, so now that we understand why our mindset is stuck, why we're still stuck in our current reality, and what changes it, I finally want to get into the exact steps to manifest a new mindset and manifest a new reality. So the first thing is you want to become consciously aware of your unconscious thoughts, that you don't default to your old reality throughout the day. All day, every day, you are thinking of something, you are doing different things, you are taking actions. If you can catch yourself in the moment of your old self and shift it back into the present moment, shift it into the new reality, that's when you'll actually start to see changes in your life. So I know for me, when I started my online business, that was something that was very new, very different for me. And I used to be a very shy, insecure, very introverted person. So every single time I would post on social media or I was about to create content, that voice would go off in my mind of like, oh, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to pay attention to you. You don't even know how to communicate. You're kind of awkward. So don't post it. Don't create content. Don't do it. Now, in the beginning, I was so unaware of my subconscious thoughts that I would just not do anything about it, right? Just be like, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. But over time, when I start to become consciously aware of those thoughts, I would reframe it in the moment. I start to tell myself there's so many people out there that probably would actually resonate with my story, even though maybe not many people know me right now. Even if it's one person that come across my posts and it resonates with them, that's the change that I want to make. So I started to reframe how I was thinking, how I was feeling, and I started to see the shift happen. Now, I want to get back into meditation because, as you guys know, Joe Dispenza is big on meditation. I'm big on meditation. I've probably been meditating every day close to almost 10 years, honestly. So what Joe Dispenza says, this is also word for word of what he said before, is if you can do your meditation while you're awake, you'll actually change. You meditate for maybe an hour a day, if even that, but awake for 16 hours and constantly reacting. So I experienced this because I used to meditate for probably like 30 to 45 minutes every single morning. I actually used to wake up at 4:45 a.m. and I would meditate and ground myself for almost an hour before I would go about my day. And I remember after I would do my meditation, like in the meditation, I'd feel so good. But after I would do it throughout the day, I wouldn't feel good because I wasn't acting like the person that was in the meditation. So you can meditate for an hour, but if you wake up from your meditation and you start responding and reacting and thinking and taking action from the old self, might as well not even meditate because you're not actually changing yourself, right? So meditation is crucial, but so is active meditation. And I don't know if that's what Joe Dispenza says, but I feel like I kind of just made that up because I also thought about when I started to learn more about the subconscious brain and more about neuroscience, I understood that people can meditate, but the real change happens when you're actually aware because we're sleeping like 8 hours a day, but then we're awake the majority of the time. If we can change the way that we are thinking, acting, speaking while we're not meditating, the meditation on its own is also going to be so much more powerful. And I said this in my last video, but I'm also going to say it here again because I'm sure people are going to ask, do I do Joe Dispenza guided meditations? I don't, because his are hours and hours long. I felt that I didn't need to do that. I couldn't sit still to actually get through it, but also just took up way too much time of my day. In the beginning, when I wasn't used to meditating, I would meditate for longer, like at least 30 minutes every single day. Now it's like 15 to 20 minutes. And I do it in the morning because when you can get into that like sleepy state, you can enter your alpha and your theta brainwaves. And that's actually when you can tap into your subconscious mind and start to see the changes and put in the affirmations and do the visualizations to actually change your life. And I just looked at my notes here. Another thing that I wanted to mention is you don't want to do your meditation just as something to check off your to-do list, right? The key part, honestly, about all of this, every single action that you're taking is not just doing it to do it, but feeling into the emotion, because everything that I shared, and we have one more point I'm going to cover, but everything that I shared is all about strong emotional connection. The reason why we have changed, whether it's positive or negative, is because of strong emotional connection. So the only way we can change again in a positive way is strong emotional connection. So anytime you're doing meditating, affirmation, journals, breath work, any of it, you want to be present as you're doing it. Or once again, might as well just not do it at all because you're not going to see the effects of it. Now, the last thing here on my slides is you create your life's experience with thought alone. If you can control the meaning you place on things, you can change your life. This was probably one of the biggest game changers for me because looking back at it, I hate to say this, but I used to be the person that always looked at the cup half empty. I would always look at what was bad in my life. I would always look at what was going wrong. I would always look at my problems, even if there was good in my life. But when I started to understand that the meaning that I'm placing on things and how I'm putting my perspective on different things in my life, it does not necessarily have to be right or wrong or true or false. It just has to be a meaning that makes me feel good. Because the entire point of changing your life, manifesting your desires, it has to come from a state of pure authenticity, pure abundance, pure joy. In the moment, this is also why two people can experience an event and have two different meanings of it. One person can walk into a room, look at the opportunity and be like, oh my gosh, this is so abundant, I'm gonna take it, this is amazing. While the other person that's standing right next to them can look at the same opportunity and think of lack, scarcity, oh my gosh, this is risky, I shouldn't do it, what if I lose my money, X, Y, and Z, right? So the meaning that you are placing on certain situations in your life, opportunities, events that are coming across from you will make or break the way that you live your life. And there has been so many times in my YouTube videos, I have seen comments where the majority, I want to say like 85 to 95% of my comments, positive, amazing, they understand, they're open to change. While the majority is like, this isn't gonna work, like this doesn't even make sense, and they're not even open to the possibility of it. If you shut something down before you ever even entertain it, it's never actually going to work for you. Joe Dispenza, I love his teachings. I love his work. I want to say he was one of the first people that I really started to learn and study and implement when, once again, I started my personal development journey. So I really hope this part 2 helped you.